we don't expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
And welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Bob Schieffer. Well, yesterday, UN inspectors revealed that Iran may be trying to develop a payload for a nuclear weapon. The International Atomic Energy Agency also confirmed that Iran has increased its uranium enrichment program, bringing them one step closer to being able to create such weapons. We're going to talk about it with Karim Sandjadpour of the Carnegie Endowment and our chief White House correspondent, Reid. Also, Kaylee Hartung has an Unplugged Under 40 about the woman behind Senator Scott Brown's press operation. And Politico's Eamon Javers is out with a new book about CIA agents moonlighting as corporate spies. We'll talk to him about the book. But first, I'm joined by Karim Sandjadpour and Reid, who is with the president out in Nevada. Karim, let's just start with this announcement that we got from the watchdog agency. Does this move it up a notch? Does it now appear that Iran is closer developing a nuclear payload for a weapon?
I don't think this changes any of the fundamentals, Bob. I think everyone, especially within Washington, already recognized that Iran was in pursuit of a nuclear weapons capability. And I think this report reaffirms that. Past IAEA reports were more reluctant to use that type of strident language because the previous general director, Mohammed al-Baradei, was fearful of the prospect of a U.S. or Israeli military strike against Iran. So he tried to couch things in more peaceful terms. But I think the current Director General, Japanese General Director Amano, is not holding back like al-Baradei is.
Well, Reid, you're with President Obama, who's out in Nevada today campaigning for the embattled Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid. How did the White House take this when they got this report yesterday? Does this signify we may get some changes in the U.S. strategy toward dealing with Iran?
Well, not really changes. They say it just reaffirms what they already thought, that Iran is moving in the direction of building a nuclear weapon. They also cited evidence of more secrecy on the part of Iran, not allowing inspectors in certain areas, suggesting that there's more going on that meets the eye. But when we asked White House and national security people, when is this tough new regime of sanctions going to come out, this new statement that would include China and Russia, presumably, on the statement, they say, quote, "We're working on it in earnest." So ever since the first of the year, which was the deadline the White House posed for Iran to do something favorable or face new sanctions, we've been waiting for the question of when to be answered, and so far they have not answered it, but they say they're working hard on it, but it really requires getting China and Russia on board, and that is not easy, Bob.
Well, for example, the Wall Street Journal today editorializes that engagement, the policy of trying to engage with Iran, has simply failed, and it's time to move on to something else. But as I hear you this morning, that is not the attitude at the White House right now.
There's not a dramatic change. This just reaffirms what they've said all along. They believe that they've got to move ahead with tough new sanctions, and we're still waiting to see what those sanctions are going to be, and the question everybody's been asking, when? Ever since the first of the year, the question has been when, and they haven't been able to come up with anything yet, and the presumption is that the difficulty is getting China and Russia on board.
Karim, why is it that China and Russia don't view sanctions in the same way that we do in this country?
Well, China and Russia have always been instinctively opposed to sanctions. China, for example, is in need of energy. Iran has energy, so there's a very strong commercial relationship between the two sides. And I think Russia has looked at their relationship with Iran in the context of the U.S.-Russia relationship. They've been reluctant to simply take Washington's talking points at face value. But I think actually the benefit of the engagement approach has been the fact that we've exposed Tehran as the intransigent actor in this equation, not the United States. 2-3 years ago, when I would talk to European diplomats or even Russian and Chinese diplomats, they would complain much more about Washington's unwillingness to engage Tehran than Tehran's inflexibility. And now the game has changed. After a year of really bending over backwards to try to change the tone and context of the U.S.-Iran relationship, I think the Obama administration has created more international cohesion than ever before. And more importantly, I think they've really widened the internal divides within Iran, both among political elites and between the population and the regime.
Well, let me ask you this. Just China, for example, we know they need energy in that part of the world. We know Russia has big commercial interests in Iran. But are those two countries prepared to live with a nuclear-armed Iran?
I think that at the moment they don't see the threat of Iran crossing that nuclear threshold as imminent. Ultimately, it's not in their interests either. Ultimately, I actually think the Russians and Chinese will come on board to sanctions which they've diluted, which they themselves have watered down somewhat.
You think that they'll eventually will go along with sanctions?
I think in the first half of March we will see another UN Security Council resolution in which China and Russia have signed up to. But I would argue that the UN Security Council resolutions are more politically consequential than they are economically consequential. The more economically consequential sanctions will come out of the European Union and the United States.
And Chip, one final question for you. We know that the Congress has been trying to put together some sanctions, and up until this point, the administration has been a little lukewarm about the sanctions being prepared on Capitol Hill. But my sense is that they may be willing to now to let Congress go ahead and design some sort of sanctions.
They may be. That's not certain yet, but certainly there are signs that that is a possibility. But certainly their focus right now is on getting China and Russia on board with these much broader global effort to impose sanctions on Iran.
Do you, Karim, do you think Iran wants nuclear weapons, or do you think they just want the capability?
Bob, if we were having this conversation a year ago, I would say that they're in pursuit of the Japan model, which is essentially wanting to be a screwdriver turn away. I think in the aftermath of these tainted presidential elections, you have now a group of hardliners running the country who may well believe that they've ceded so much legitimacy in the aftermath of the elections that the only way to recoup that legitimacy is indeed by crossing that nuclear threshold. So I think that we no longer can take for granted that they just want to be a screwdriver turn away. They could well be pursuing the North Korea model now.
Karim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about something entirely different now, and that is the coming of Scott Brown, the new senator from Massachusetts, to Capitol Hill. When a new senator or congressman usually comes to Washington, they soon discover they may have been a big shot back home, but they're just one of many here in Washington. And the most daunting task that their press people face is just getting them noticed, getting their name in the paper or their picture on television. Well, that's the case if you are anyone but Gail Gitchko, who runs the press operation for Washington's newest senator, Scott Brown. For her, getting her boss noticed is the least of her worries. Kaylee Hartung caught up with this fast-moving woman for this week's Washington Unplugged Under 40.
In your 7 years in politics, have you ever seen media intrigue like this with someone that you've worked with?
Not like this.
Gail Gitchko has worked for Mitt Romney, John McCain, for the GOP chairman Michael Steele. But she's never had a job like this one.
Can you pronounce those talking points?
Communications director for Washington's newest rock star, the new senator from Massachusetts, Scott Brown.
With Senator Brown, he's got such incredible name ID that it's not hard to tell reporters who your boss is. So we've been getting a lot of press requests, interview requests for you name it, we've received it.
Gail had to hit the ground running. After his election, Brown put the pedal to the metal, literally.
He drove his truck down from Massachusetts. He's been coming into the office every day, whether it's been a snowstorm outside or a federal holiday. He's been in the office.
So is this your stuff?
No, this isn't our stuff, but it does look like the hallway upstairs where we're going to be moving in.
For now, Brown is camping out in a trailer adjacent to the Russell Senate building.
This is the temporary office of Senator Brown.
Next week, he'll be moving into some of the best real estate on Capitol Hill, Senator Ted Kennedy's old office.
There's a lot of organizing, there's a lot of repainting and, cleaning the carpets and everything that we're we're working on. And while our time in that space is limited, we're certainly looking forward to moving in there as soon as it's ready.
That, too, is only temporary. As the most junior senator, he'll be moving again with the start of the new Congress in 2011, when a more senior senator will have dibs on the prized office space. In the meantime, Brown's team is focusing on their main priority, taking care of the folks back home.
Thank you. Very
God bless you, sir.
Thank you very much.
You know, Senator Kennedy's, one of his legacies is his constituent service that was just second to none. Now, one of the big priorities is to make sure that we're responding in a very timely manner to those people who have questions.
Which prompted me to ask one of the most popular questions they're getting.
So when are we going to see Senator Brown versus President Obama and the daughters on the basketball court?
Well, sure. Yeah, that has been one of the questions that I've gotten a lot
So
lately.
I can get a 2-on-2 game with him, so with my daughter, and he can pick his best person.
So we'll see if that happens, but that certainly will be another exciting opportunity for us.
With the unprecedented attention Senator Brown is getting, there will be no shortage of work for this young communications director. But help is on the way. She says the office is being flooded with applications. Bob, literally thousands of applications piled up in that office. A lot of people want to work for this guy.
Everybody loves a winner, and in Washington, they love them most of all. Thank you very much, Kaylee. Finally today, Eamon Javers is a reporter for Politico, and he has just exposed a little-known practice where CIA agents work on the side for large corporations and spies. In his new book, Broker, Trader, Lawyer, Spy, The Secret World of Corporate Espionage. Eamon is here with us. Thanks for coming today. And what a fascinating subject this is. I think there was a movie about this last year that where I first knew about it, where these corporations now go to a considerable trouble to spy on one another, and they use all these ex-CIA agents.
That's right. And it's not just Hollywood. It happens in real life, too. And that's the purpose of the investigation that I launched to do this book, is to find out exactly who these guys are, who are they working for, and what are they doing. And what I found is that companies today have access to and are using the same kinds of spy technology and technique, even some of the same people that only governments used a decade or so ago.
So what do they try to find out? I mean, if I'm a corporation and I decide to hire a spy, what would I hire him to do?
Well, you could do it in a couple of different contexts. One is if you're an investor looking to make an investment decision. Companies always have problems that are secret and hidden that investors really want to know about. So investors typically hire spies to find out where the weaknesses of these companies are, and they'll do all kinds of operations, including undercover operations, surveillance operations, and all the rest, to find those hidden weaknesses and then short that stock and maybe profit from that company's downfall.
So would they do illegal things like electronic surveillance, that sort of business?
Well, they say they don't do illegal things, but you know, I was in London. London happens to be sort of the global crossroads of this industry, and I was meeting with some of the top corporate surveillance guys in the world, and they were complaining to me. They say they follow people, they tail executives, they'll do bugging of their cars, that sort of thing. But they were complaining about the Eastern European spies who go even farther. So every layer of the onion you unpeel, you find there's another layer under there. So
Eastern European, like Russians and
ex-Soviet bloc spies. You find that a lot of, after the Cold War ended, a lot of Russian spies entered the private market. So for example, not too far from where we're sitting here, there's a firm called Trident Group in Northern Virginia. All of those guys are ex-Soviet military intelligence and KGB, and they're now working for some of America's biggest companies. They work for Disney, prominent American law firms, doing intelligence.
And former KGB agents spying on American corporations and are hired by American corporations to do it.
It couldn't be any more ironic. And what you find is that people who were committed communists for the early part of their careers, when the Soviet Union went bust, they needed work and they needed something to do. And they had these skills, so that now they're selling those skills in the global economy. But you also see that with veteran CIA officers as well. I found CIA veterans working for Russian oligarchs, working for Middle Eastern sheiks. Here in Washington, a number of prominent firms hire ex-Secret Service, CIA, FBI, all to do this kind of global corporate espionage.
Do they waterboard?
I haven't found any waterboarding in this space, but I did find a firm full of ex-CIA interrogators, people with 20, 25 years of experience in interrogations, and they're applying that experience in the corporate sphere. It's very interesting stuff.
Let's hold this book up. This is great. Broker, Trader, Lawyer, Spy, The Secret World of Corporate espionage. This is a real keeper, I think. Eamon, thank you very much for coming.
Appreciate it.
Can't wait. Thank you for watching Washington Unplugged, and make sure you watch us on Sunday on television when I have an interview with former Secretary of State Colin Powell on Face the Nation. Bob Schieffer here. Have a great weekend.
If we don't expand our imagination,
Justification for being what you are.